to Desmond and just tell him who you are, where you're from, and then we'll get started.
Okay, Desmond, I'm Nidra Jones. I am the principal at a middle school here on the island. Um,
Awesome.
Born and raised in Mississippi. I've
Okay.
traveled the world.
Okay.
Um,
What part of Mississippi?
Heidelberg.
Oh, I think I've heard of that. Both of my grandfathers are from Mississippi. They're from Starksville and ooh, Biloxi. How could I forget?
Okay,
Um,
okay.
yeah, but
But
both
for
my
lots, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Okay,
Knoxville,
awesome.
Mississippi State.
Yep.
Mississippi State. Yeah, my sister attended Mississippi State.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
went
Yeah.
undergrad.
That side of the family, my mother's side of the family, grew up in Detroit, but my uncle spent a lot of summers in Mississippi, and he ended up going to Ole Miss, and it made a lot of
Okay,
people on my grandfather's side of the family upset because they're bulldogs.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, Big- yeah, yeah. It is. Ole
Awesome.
Miss of the area where Ole Miss is located. I mean, I'm not. You never know where you're gonna end up in life, but Starks, Ole Miss is in. Is it? It's not in Starksville. That's
It's in
Mississippi State.
Oxford.
Oh,
It's in
Oxford.
Oxford. It's in Oxford.
Oxford
Yeah.
is really. I love it's a college town, and you get a lot of like-minded people there. You get a lot of writers, John Grisham, and that crew. A lot of people actually
Okay.
move from different parts of the United States to Oxford.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, okay.
but it's,
Awesome.
yeah.
Okay. So, sharing images from our phones. Sherry, you want to start us off?
Well, let me start you off with a story. Last night I was at dinner with my sister-in-law, and she was asking me, Sherry, since you got your phone, since you got on island, have you changed it? And I said, no, my phone is fine. I don't need to change it. This morning at 6 o'clock, I was talking to Nidra, and in the middle of the conversation, the phone died, and it has not resumed working yet. And we've charged it and attempted everything. But with that said, on my smartwatch, this is the picture that I have on my smartwatch. Let me see if I can. Oh, Jesus. You cannot see.
I
Oh,
see.
you have 30% on my phone? No, you can't see. You're showing the shadow. Okay, so why don't you go to somebody else and let me try to work this, because I need you to see my picture too.
Just tell us what it is. Give us a brief.
No. Okay.
Yeah, just
It's a picture. It's a picture of me with my two sons. And this picture was taken last year when the little one graduated high school and I flew back to the United States. This was taken at Dave and Buster's
awesome.
after the high school graduation, and we went to celebrate. And I keep it on my phone, on my wrist, so I have a daily reminder of my purpose. And that's why that picture is important to me.
Awesome. Okay. Go ahead, Miss Veronica. Good morning to you. You're on mute.
Good morning, everyone. It's a reflection of, no, you probably can't see it. This is my latest grandson. You
I
see
see
it?
it.
Okay.
Oh, I see it.
Awesome. That's my latest grandson. He's 2 months old. And so I have 3 grandchildren, 2 grandsons and 1 granddaughter. And so they are just my heart. And this study actually helps me to remember, that I have 2 grandsons that I need to make sure that they are well educated and they have every opportunity to excel. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. Miss Tina, you want to go next?
Okay, so this just proved to me that I don't have enough photos on my phone of what I like. So this is my husband, my eldest, my daughter, and then my second oldest son. And that was the last time all five of us were together. And that was July 2017, which is way too long. So I have plenty of photos of just the boys or the daughter with one son, but all five of us together, I have nothing on my phone. And that is really sad. Like I don't even have a selfie of all five of us. So that tells me I got some work to do to make sure I get some more pictures of all five of us.
Laura, you want to go next?
Sure. I'm on my cell phone, so I can't show my picture, but my favorite picture right now is of me and my daughter. She's in 4th grade this year, and which is the grade I teach. I think because I'm so passionate about teaching, a lot of times my kids come second. I mean, I don't want to say they come second, but they have to wait for my time because of all the time I'm putting into school. So I love that she's with me now and I get to see her every day and we get to share a lot of experiences. And we've been wearing a lot of like matching t-shirts this year. So it's just been a really special experience for me.
Okay. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you for sharing. I'm going to get this wrong, but I want to say Miss Cox. It says he Cox on my screen.
You said it right.
Is he Cox? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome.
So the picture I have is also of my 3 kids. I have a 10th grader, an 8th grader, and a 2nd grader. So one in high school, one in middle school, and one in elementary. I picked that picture because I think all the things we've been talking about and things we're going through, it definitely all starts, in the home, being a good example to our own kids and teaching those values and what's right with them starting there. So they're obviously important to me. They're my little screensaver here, and don't feel bad. I'm one of those bad parents too. I think my kids are eating Halloween candy for breakfast, so don't feel bad, Desmond.
Yes. It's so good to know I'm not alone. Okay, Marty, you want to go next? Good morning to you.
Good morning. Okay, let me get my, this is a picture of my husband with one of my best friend's sons, and he just won the tennis tournament this week for high school. So exciting. I love this picture, first of all, because I love sports and tennis, and it's just exciting when you know a kid from when they're born and then they start making all of these exciting achievements. It's just exciting to be a part of that.
Awesome. Congratulations to him. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. Dave, you have something you want to share or talk about? David?
Well, I can show a picture on the computer. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it or not. So let me spin it around and we'll just try. Can you see that at all?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So those are my babies. We can't all 3 lay on the couch now because they're much bigger and they'll squash me. But yeah, I love my boys. So
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. Nedra, you want to go next?
Okay. I'm really not a phone person, so I don't do a lot of pictures either, but I have a picture of my house of me and my daughters. Can you see?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
We were, actually, this was taken in San Diego. We used to have some amazing times together. We was a Charlie's Angels. And this one was so cool because I always wanted to go to the San Diego Zoo, although this is not at the zoo, but this was our next stop after the zoo. So it just reminds me of hanging out with my girls when we were all together.
You said you all were extras in Charlie's Angels? How did you?
No. Well, you know what? We were named Charlie's Angels, all 3 of us.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Charlie's Angels. I mean, I would, I wouldn't mind signing a contract with Charlie's Angels,
Yeah, I would have killed to been an extra in Charlie's Angels. Even the old series, I would have killed for that opportunity.
But yeah, it's family. Mm-hmm. I was a single parent. I raised my girls, and we although I was their mom, we were sort of like sisters and best friends, but yet and still we had a mutual respect for each other. I always taught them that you can, talk to me about anything, or you can say anything to me as long as you do it with respect.
Mm-hmm.
And we still have that pact.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Nathan McCoy. Nathan, you want to share next? How you doing? You're on mute.
I certainly am. How you doing, boss?
Good morning.
Like Ms. Holloman, I realized there's not much on my phone, but this is one of my favorite pictures I do have. It's my daughter in Cambodia. I like the contrast that's red against black and the orange of the monks. It just so happened at this moment that a wind gust kind of blew her shirt up, and the monks are walking away from my daughter with her shirt up at them as a 3-year-old. So I like this picture. I don't know.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. Mari, you want to go next? If that's possible. It looks like you're on your phone.
Yeah, I can unmute for a moment, but my favorite picture that I have, good morning. My favorite picture I have right now is of the sun coming up over Mount Fuji, because it's my screensaver, and it reminds me that every day is truly a new day, and you can just do better than you did the last one.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, and good to have you again. Good to have you again.
Yes.
Awesome. Miss Kathy, good morning to you. You're up next.
I don't own a cell phone, so I'm one of the last Americans on the earth to not have a cell phone, because I don't like the so much disconnect that people have had over the last many years. And so I still can use technology, but so my favorite photo that is on my computer is of my family. I have 5 children and my granddaughter, and so we have had great opportunities and experiences, and most of them in the summer in Upper Michigan. So with COVID, I hope that I can see them someday soon.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. I have a picture here. Sometimes when I conduct workshops, I asked for participants to just show the last picture they took. But it's actually, I think, a little bit more interesting when you're able to share something that that you care a little bit more about. But this is a picture of my daughter. This is my youngest. This is Soraya, and she has a thing for boxes, and she just put herself in a Target box. Yeah, I don't really know what she was doing. I just came downstairs into the basement, and she had put herself in a Target box. So yeah, but I like to do that because it kind of oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sherry. I forgot.
Heather, I don't think Heather went. Did
we skip you, Heather? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Miss Mendoza. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. I didn't need to go, but it's funny that you noticed my Steelers flag in the back, because my favorite picture on my phone is one with me with the great Mike Tomlin, who is the Steelers coach. I actually went to high school with him, and he's a great guy. So apologies to my children. I love them too, but he's undefeated in the NFL, so we're going to go with him today.
Yeah, Mike Tomlin's a pretty big deal. He trumps my kids. How about that? Okay, Sherry, did you figure yours out? No? Okay. So let's go ahead and get started, guys. I have some questions, but I think what I want to do is just kind of talk about chapters 9 and 10 in very broad strokes. In chapters really 4 through 8, I wanted to spend time talking to the reader, talking to school leaders and talking to teachers about what we can do in the classrooms and in our immediate environments that can be impactful for Black boys in particular, but really for Black children in general. In chapters 8, I get a lot of feedback on chapter 8 over this notion of restorative justice. And, I think it's very important to think about, particularly in these times, how we approach behavior management, how we approach a lot of behaviors that are developmentally appropriate. And that's chapter 8 ends up being, for lack of a better word, the end of the conversation around the pedagogical aspects of what it means to be educating Black boys. And then in chapters 9 and 10, I move back into that political space, and it gets kind of airy. I think is a term that I want to use, to the degree that it's more philosophical. It's harder to get a grasp of. But I think those conversations are very important, because when I talk about this notion of firefighting, those are the really difficult steps that are important for us to take outside of our classrooms, and how we empower each other as teachers, I think is important in how we approach the actual firefighting. And I think, Sherry, one of the last nuggets we had when we were together last was, how do we fight the power, right? Like, what does that kind of look like? And I left us with the notion of, there are not lots of people here, or lots of people there who are behind you to take your job. But I still want to have a conversation with that. But I want us to keep in mind, how do we build coalition with other people who think like we think and believe what we believe, as it relates to the education of children in general. Okay. So what I want to do is, I think I want to create some breakout rooms. But I'm going to share my screen here in a second. And I just kind of want to talk in general about, just highlight a few things, excuse me. And then I want to put us in breakout rooms to kind of answer a few questions in chapter 9. And then we'll maybe take 15 minutes to talk about those in small groups. We can come back together, and then we can break out, and then we'll do the same thing again with chapter 10. We'll get back in our breakout rooms. We'll talk about those questions, and then we'll come back together as a group and talk next steps. Like, how do we really, the question I asked in chapter 10, where do we go from here? Okay. How's that sound? Okay. So nobody wants to hear my voice, so I'm going to move rather quickly through this and share my screen. Okay. Can you all see my screen? Okay. You guys didn't see all that Busta Rhyme I was listening to on YouTube, did you? So there are, I believe I have 4 questions from chapter 9, and I have approximately another 4 questions from chapter 10. And what I'll do is, I'm going to put us in the put us in a chat room. I'm sorry, put us in the breakout rooms, and I will type the questions in the chat feature so everyone has them, and then we can answer those questions. If you are someone who is behind in the reading, because I know how that goes, I tried to pick questions that are relatively easy to answer without having read, but I think the reading will, obviously, it'll inform your thinking just a little bit more. And then there are, for chapter 9, there is one direct quote that I asked you to respond to, and same with chapter 10. Okay, so I am going to this first question I wanted to do as a group, and it says, is college or bust for all school children sound policy, and where does this mantra come from? So I want to open up the floor. What do we think about this notion of college for all students? And then do you have a sense of, or a belief, or an idea of where this mantra comes from? And you can just unmute yourself and talk and chime in, okay?
Okay, I'll start. I'll start with, I do not know where the mantra comes from, but is college or bus for all school children a sound policy? Absolutely not. It takes all types to make the world go round. And I mentioned, I believe in the last session or the one that you were in, I attended a vocational high school. And in that vocational high school, my curriculum was based on cosmetology. And today I'm not a cosmetologist. However, there are many kids who graduated and became beauticians, estheticians, and so on and so forth, and did not go to college, but attended further trade schools to increase their skills and also develop strategies to manage their businesses, and are very successful. And they did it without going to college. And I am sure that this is the same for many other blue collar jobs or hands on jobs. And without those people, where would we be? So, not to say that they couldn't have received the education in college as well, but I just don't believe college is the end all be all.
Okay, thank you for that, Sherry. Someone else want to share? There's no right or wrong answer. So if I can ease any tension.
I agree with Dr. Hayes in that. Because I remember going to school, and our school, my high school had vocational classes, and my cousins, like their dads were plumbers and carpenters, and they didn't actually go to school for that. They truly was just gifted in that kind of work, masonry work, and so their sons, they were taught how to do that. And I have now cousins who are my age now. I mean, they build houses, beautiful homes, and they're taking classes and stuff, but they didn't necessarily went to college for that. But it seemed like that mantra came around maybe late 70s, 80s time frame, where people were focusing so much more on college, and definitely the early 90s. It's all about college, and they say college and career ready. However, we seem to drop the career part, and we're focusing so much on college when some students, not necessarily, they are gifted in their talents and being able to do things with their hands, and their creativity in their minds. I think a different type of college can be for those students, not necessarily the 4-year liberal arts type.
Okay, someone else?
I also don't believe that college is for everybody, but in our system, it is like Veronica just said, it says college and career ready, but there is absolutely, I'd say maybe 2% that actually is focused on career readiness. Students over the even last several years have the requirements in high school to graduate is, when I was in school, you had 1 year of math. Now it's 4 years of math. You had different things. And not all students need to take calculus. And they need to have classes that are going to be focused on careers. And the debt level for college now is just absolutely ridiculous. We are putting ourselves into situations that we'll never be able to dig out of with the debt. And I'm guilty as a parent that, you know, when I had children, I thought, yeah, I want my children to go to college. And because I was brought up in poverty and people didn't go to college, and you were kind of taught that, you know, the way out of poverty is education. And so therefore, you know, you get that degree to get the right job, to get the right paycheck. But in reality, there's several of my siblings who did what Veronica said as well in high school. They had apprenticeships, even very young, as electricians and carpenters and so forth. They make far more money than I will ever make, and were able to retire early and so forth. And they, like Sherry said, we all have a purpose, and we all can't be professors. We need all types of jobs. We need someone to do what other people might think are minimal. We need the garbage collectors. We need, everybody has a purpose. I just think sometimes as a society, we value certain jobs and pay certain jobs more, which we need to focus on the purpose and a livable wage for everybody, not just people who go to college.
Yeah. Would someone else like to chime in?
Yeah, I would just say that to echo that point is that I think the paradigm shifted when college became an industry. You know, post high school education became an industry. So we push, you know, we've all bought into that. You have to go to college. You have to go to college. And I'm an avid instructor too. So I am for post high school education, but I don't believe that it's as narrow as college, right? There's a lot of, there should be more opportunities for education, career development, apprenticeships, all those sorts of avenues for students once they graduate high school. And some nations do that, and some of them do it well, particularly in Europe. But when you have a college industry, then that obviously is going to impact the messaging that students get. And I think it's also a disservice to our students when the statistics don't lie, which is that it's access to college and readiness for college is not equitable. There's a huge disparity, which is why we're here today talking. So yeah, there's a great deal that needs to be done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, Ms. Mari. Anyone else?
One of the things I've been thinking about a lot lately, especially with the recent election, and it's something I wasn't aware of before. I think something like 2/3 of Americans are not degree holders. It's a minority of Americans that hold degrees, and our leaders are overwhelmingly, you know, in that minority. And our institutions of education of higher learning often determine what success is. And we're all, as educators, in that bubble of degree holders. And I guess the thing I've been wondering about all this is what are we missing? You know, what are we not connecting with outside of our bubble that institutionally we promote? I mean, I know we say, you know, career ready as part of our college and career ready, but how do we bridge that gap between our own experience as degree earners and those who don't, and the stigma of vocational training as being like, you know, you couldn't cut it, right? You couldn't make it. And so, which, you know, I think the same could be said about, you know, what's those who can do and those who can't teach. There's some overlap there, but I just wonder about how our experience affects our view of you know, the difference between aiming for a degree and aiming for a trade.
Yeah, one of the subtexts of the book, if you will, or a secondary theme is this notion of educators stepping out of themselves to get a sense of why they believe what they believe, and that the system, right, that's us each individually, but as a system, the system has to think about how did we get here? And that happens as a system when everyone takes that inventory. You, Nathan mentioned the word stigma. And that's a very powerful term, because I think we place elitism, and we also place a certain amount of prestige on careers where we're using our minds over our bodies, and we're talking, we're writing, and I talk about it. I really don't talk about it. I glance over it in chapter 6. As I read over it now, I'm actually embarrassed, where I talk about, I'm referencing Ibram Kendi, and he's talking about, Cotton Mather and the founders of America, and how everything in terms of how we educate came from the Greeks and the Romans. And we're still in that space. You're talking, you're thinking, you're contemplating, and you're using your mind. So someone mentioned a garbage collector, and Sherry mentioned cosmetology. I would not have went to college if it wasn't for a cosmetologist, because my mother to this day is a hairdresser. And she's the only one in the family who everyone borrows money from, including me. So, again, this subtext of the system has to take inventory of how we got here, so we can then plot a course of where do we want to go. I purposefully start with this question because I think, and my editor and I, if I could pull you all behind the curtain for a second, we fought over parts of chapter 9 that just kind of ballooned, where I was talking about what happened to vocational schools in the mid 80s, really throughout the 80s, and the early part of the 90s, where in the big cities, they just completely collapsed. And a lot of that was because of unions. The pipe unions and plumbers, mechanics were complaining to city governments about this excess demand, and that excess demand was driving down costs. So the schools began to close. The unions had a powerful impact on vocational education across inner cities. The other, but to my original point, in terms of the chapter ballooning, was this notion of African Americans have been denied access to college. So part of the neoliberal agenda, which is not necessarily a bad thing, was to make sure that African Americans, inner city children, Black and brown children, however you want to term it, believe that they have the opportunity to go to college. But there's a hyper focus there, and it's actually, I use the term paternalism. It's paternalistically given as this is what you have to do to be successful, and we don't as schools, as school systems, talk about alternatives for our children. And when we do, they're typically as footnotes. So I want us to consider, because part of the chapter 9 and 10 is about control. Who makes the decisions, and how do we thwart the decisions if we believe that they're not healthy, particularly if they're not healthy for wide swaths of children, okay? So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, okay? And I'm going to put us in, I'm gonna put us in breakout rooms. Sherry, I don't see that feature. Did you take that away? Where did I go?
I don't know. I have to go back and look. Let's see. It may not let you. I don't know. I don't know. I'm still waiting to sign in. I'm on my dinosaur at home, so bear with me.
Yeah, I think the host has to be the one to put into great breakout groups.
Okay.
He's the co-host.
You want to just make me the
Let's
host?
see. Yeah, let's see.
I think you can right click on my Brady Bunch box and okay, let's see here.
It's still not something. Jesus.
Yeah, it didn't pop up. Actions. So we won't fight it. We can do it as a group. The last thing I want to do is fight technology. I always lose. But let me go back to my PowerPoint so I can bring up the second question, and then we'll just go from there. Okay, the next question says, thumbs up if you can see my screen. Okay, high stakes testing is helping education overall. Yes, no, it depends. What say you?
No way.
Why do you, what? Who said that? Did you get an F for today?
Kathy.
Who says no way? Why is that? I lost you there. Someone else? High stakes testing. What do you think?
That was not me that said no way, but I think that I would have to go with C. I don't believe in all this testing that is overdoing it for students and teachers, but I also believe in assessment, because how do we know where to go if we don't know where somebody is? So if we don't have any types of data, you are not going to be able to show the people who may not be the firefighters for our children to be able to see the gap that exists. So in a sense, we do need to have some assessments to see where children are and where we want to take them. And so, but the number of testing and so forth that we've had increase is just crazy.
Thank you for that, Kathy. Thank you. Someone else?
Yeah, I agree with Kathy also, and I think also the type of testing. You know, why does it have to be these high stakes, these standardized testing? Because again, if we're going to, we're supposed to be teaching teachers or teachers to differentiate, but yet these tests are all the same for every kid, and you're expecting every kid to meet a standard that is, I think, unrealistic. We're all such individuals, and then, you know, in the classroom we're supposed to be doing a lot of differentiation and meeting kids where they are.
Can you please mute yourself if you're not talking? There's a lot of feedback. Veronica, can you repeat that last part?
Oh, yes, I said when we're trying to sure we're differentiating in the classroom, but then we present them with a test that's standardized and for everyone, I think we're defeating our whole purpose of truly getting data that's going to be valuable to help us move forward from where they are to where they need to be, reaching their full potential. I think the type of test assessments need to be different.
Miss Finney, I think your mic might be in your laptop. It's not coming out of your headphones. So every time you put your hands down, we hear a really loud noise. That makes sense.
It could be this thing.
Right on.
I will adjust it.
Yeah, that's much better. That was much better. because I was looking for someone to unmute to mute there. I was like, who is this person? So, but I think problem solved, Veronica. Thank you for that, David. Someone else? I think you all know where I stand on this testing. If I could just tell a really quick story. When I was working with, I forgot what fake name I gave him in the book, but he was the principal that I was terminated with while I was working at Center City. A super good guy by the name of Andrew Touchette. And a teacher said to him, Mr. Touchette, aren't we teaching to the test? And he said, if you're talking about teaching kids how to read, write, and do math, of course we're teaching to the test. And I said, man, that makes a lot of sense. But again, the bigger issue is, why do we have such a myopic view of learning? And when you look at the billions of dollars that flow into companies like Pearson and McGraw-Hill and these other companies that are entrenched in many public schools that help you prep for the bigger test, it's absolutely amazing. The data point that I don't get a lot of feedback around is that in urban communities, children tend to spend an extra 4 days a school year testing. So that's the loss of 1 week's worth of instruction. And what does that look like over a series of years, right? So I think to Kathy's point, testing definitely has its place, but we have to differentiate between the need for data and the need for high stakes testing. So if there are no other thoughts on that, I'm going to move us along.
Well, I would just add to that, to what you just described as part of the industry, right? To me, what has happened in education is not much different than what Eisenhower warned against with the military industrial complex.
Mm-hmm.
It's a toxic environment where we spend more of our money that could be going to more valuable forms of education on these huge contracts for testing and test services. And and to Veronica's point, we're preached to, and we tell our teachers to spend all this time differentiating for a test that's not differentiated at all. Not only is it the same for every student, but the questions are, I mean, if you look at Finland, they go to school half the time. They have a much better results in their education system, and not one single student takes a multiple choice test from the time they start school to the time they graduate.
Wow.
Yet that's what we serve as, as nutrition for our students, is standardized tests. It's self-defeating.
The notion of a neoliberal agenda in education, it sounds like conspiracy theory, but we're actually feeling the impact of it here in the States in terms of the privatization of hospitals and how we're dealing with the COVID virus. So I have gotten some flack, I won't lie, around Desmond. This is nothing but conspiracy theory. But when you look at, Mari, to your point about this notion of where the dollars are flowing, how there's a disconnect between what we teach, what we say we need from our students, what we say we need from teachers, and how they serve our students, and then how we gauge our children at the end of the year, you're really looking at a philosophical disconnect where this is what learning is, and there is no other alternative, and it's being driven by the market. And what, I talk about this notion of what happens and what works in a private sector doesn't always work in a public sector. And there's tons of data that speaks to that, from what's happening in nonprofit worlds and what we were doing in the early 2000s when we were moving people from corporate America into principalships in schools, and how these corporate leaders were absolutely miserable working in schools, and there's just tons of data points on that. But we have to Well, we'll get to that point. Okay. Next question. Let's skip that. You guys are in a different place. That was a question about charters. If anyone wants the PowerPoint, I'll send it to you. But I just want to be mindful of you guys and what do you want? Hold on. It's time to beat my children. Say hi. Come on. People. What's your name? Okay, get out of here. See, you're making me look bad. See, I'm in Savannah. No, it's too late now. Get out of here. Come on, say hi.
Hi.
What's your name?
Savannah.
What grade are you in, sweetie?
Kindergarten.
You got to look at the people. You see that green light? That's our camera, right? You're in kindergarten?
Yeah.
Okay, say hi to the people so Dad can finish. Okay, then we'll read a book, okay? Or we'll watch Star Wars, okay?
Let's watch Star Wars.
Okay, you got to go upstairs and let Dad.
All right, Savannah.
Okay. That's my 5-year-old. Okay, here's a question that I put in here tongue in cheek, and give me your honest feedback. Was I axe grinding against Teach for America in chapter 9? I would love to hear your feedback. I was like, why am I giving all these stupid, serious questions? It's 8 o'clock in the morning. What say you?
I don't want to say yes you were or no you weren't, because it depends on, you know, the lens you're looking at it from. And I say that it's not just Teach for America. It's a lot of these programs where folks transition, you know, they move careers from one area to the other, and they come into teaching thinking teaching is going to be, you know, this blissful, easy career or job that they're going to do. And then, you know, no, you really didn't. You, from my side, from where I'm looking at it, I thought, you know, I've seen people do Teach for America as well as the boots. What is it called? The military one. Boots to
Troops to
Teachers.
Teachers. Troops to Teachers.
Yeah, that's the one.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing against our veterans, but I went to school for years to learn pedagogy and methodology and different things in reference and child psychology in order to learn how to teach the whole child and what to do, what not to do, how to use data, and then you get a 2-week or 1-year program and you come into the same classroom as I am, and you're making probably the same money as myself based on whatever other degrees you came in with from your past job, and you really don't know how to do the job. You can't plan properly. You don't know where to look for the resources, how to utilize the resources that you find, how to differentiate it so every learner is reachable. So before going off on a tangent, no, I think you were absolutely right.
Someone else?
Oh, I have a slightly different perspective. I think that I see Sherry's point absolutely, that that there's a great deal of study and effort that goes into our profession. It's not just a job; it's a profession. But I don't think that necessarily precludes people from other careers from making a transition. Because as we all know, our first few years of being teachers was a lot of OJT, right? A lot of on-the-job training, a lot of professional growth. We're still doing that professional growth, but I do think that it's helpful actually to have educators and people in the education career field where that wasn't maybe their first choice. I think when you have people from other career fields, they bring something to the table. They bring that diversity, they bring that experience. And I do think that resonates with students. But, you know, to Sherry's point, it needs to be a rigorous process, I think, is to make sure that education is getting there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
I think also just the turnover is maybe more of a concern than where they came from. If teaching is very hard, and if you don't have, it's hard even when you have years and years of training and experience and practice, but if you're coming in unprepared, the stamina to continue, I think, could be more of a challenge. And then, you know, we see this all the time in our military community. We have so many teachers coming and going, and like you shared in your book, you know, building that relationship with the kids and even as a faculty or within a staff is very hard to do. We're constantly having to build new relationships and make changes, and trying to form any type of continuity is definitely a challenge.
Yeah, yeah. And Laura, I think it was you, and I was making a point when I was with you all in my first session, and I was talking about, you know, little things that teachers could do that could have a big impact, and how sometimes we as educators, really even as people, we don't make changes because it's easy to not make changes. And you talked about the pressure that was on teachers, and I said, no. When you get to chapter 9, you will see that I'm in belief that there's a war against teachers, and I sincerely believe that the perception or the reality of Teach for America is one of the tools and part of the weaponry against teachers, because there's this belief that someone else can come in and do the job just as easily. And, you know, I think that Mari's point about diversity is very interesting. I just, the question that I have would be, to what degree and at what expense? Because I would love to go and coach the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're not going to let me in the door. Like, I've been watching football.
That's what I'm saying.
I've been watching football for a very long time, and I could have Juju Schuster-Smith run a reverse and all of these other things. I have schemes up here, but I'm not qualified to do it. And if you're going to qualify me to do it, it definitely has to be a rigorous process. But even in making that process rigorous, the rhetorical question that I ask is, have I cheapened coaching in the NFL? Right? This guy has been a teacher and a principal for the last 20 years, and he's on the sidelines with Mike Tomlin with a headset telling this guy to run a reverse. I mean, and I think that's
and
how.
And whose team are you going to want to be on?
Well, who wants to listen to me? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And we readily put well-meaning, well-to-do, recent college graduate, or even adults who are transitioning, right? Because there's always the 32-year-old attorney who says, you know what, I want to do something more meaningful. We readily place those people in front of our children, and they're not prepared, but the families don't know how to fight and advocate and say, you know what, is this really a good idea? You know, so that's my question is how are organizations like that used to cheapen the profession? Because I sincerely believe that a lot of the luster has been taken off the profession, to the degree that we believe that, you know, this person can come in and be just as effective as this person who's been doing it for 12 versus 15 years or whatever the case may be. But I did ask the question. I was rereading parts of chapter 9, and I was like, dude, you wrote that? This is so mean. It's mean-spirited. But yeah, I'm joking. I'm going to move us along if anyone else didn't have something that they wanted to add.
Okay. I can't say that I agree with that. It just depends on the individual, because I'm a firm believer that if you want to be successful in anything that you embark upon, of course, I can't be a medical doctor because I don't have the training and the background to do that. But in the world of teaching and in some professions, if it is a strong desire, you will work and you will be quite successful at it. And I will give you a perfect example. My daughter is a teacher now. She
Okay.
did not go to university to be a teacher. She was a biology chemistry major. She wanted to work in a lab, create. So she decided, okay, she was looking for work, and she took on a teaching job with the alternative certification, and that's what you do in many states. It's quite amazing. She spends a lot of time preparing lessons for her students, and I would put her against any educator, any master educator. So I can't, I just can't agree that people that are coming from the outside, coming into education, don't deserve an opportunity to be successful educators, because we also have people that go to university and major in education, and I would tell you, I wouldn't want them teaching my child. So that's a double-edged sword. It depends on the individual. It depends on, you know, their own ethics, whether they're willing to put in the work, because teaching is a lot of work. It is not a 7 to 3 job or 7 to 2 job. So it depends on the individual. And also in Texas, you just don't walk into those programs. You get a mentor. First of all, you have to pass the praxis. You have to pass the portion of the test that's within the curriculum in which you're going to teach, and you're monitored. And at the end of that school year, then you take the general portion of the test, which is really sort of a no-brainer at the end of that first year. But it just depends on the program and the person.
Nidra, I appreciate you sharing that, because as strictly on the question that he asked, I definitely didn't think he was grinding against them, axe grinding against them. However, I do not believe that there are as many success stories, nor do I believe that there are as many rigorous programs. And as Desmond mentioned, that is the key, or that is what we're looking for when we're talking about having these second career folks or people who are not trained in the field coming in, that there should be something rigorous and there should be some desire to extend yourself. And it sounds like that's what your daughter was part of. But I do not believe Teach for America is that way. And I do not believe Troops to Teachers provides that rigor or that level of accountability for folks coming in. And yes, and maybe there are 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 people that come through and they have the desire and they do succeed, especially with the coaching that they receive and the support that they receive. But it sounds like where your daughter is, there is an exceptional program that is working for granting second career people coming into education. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes, go ahead. The other thing I want us to be mindful of, which I witnessed when I was serving as an administrator, but was kind of dumbfounded and taken aback by in doing a research for the book, was the amount of school districts that were incentivizing buying out veteran teachers. And when I talk about weaponizing Teach for America against our students and against veteran teachers, going back to the point that I made earlier, that war, where why do we see the veteran 17-year teacher or a 25-year teacher as being someone who is not capable, is someone who doesn't study, is not, willing to improve themselves and doesn't improve themselves to the degree that they have to be replaced by someone who is 24 and interested in coming into the field and making changes and things like that. So I think that was very disheartening to hear that in inner cities across the Rust Belt, that you have city governments and state governments essentially trying to buy out veteran teachers, because again, in the neoliberal thought is, how is everything impacting the bottom line? Because the goal is to make profits. So if you can pay a teacher, $46,000 to teach a group of third graders, why would you pay a teacher $74,000 or even $85,000 to teach that same group of children when they're going to take a test that's culturally irresponsive and their test scores are going to be relatively the same? So I think I think this part of our conversation was kind of segmented, but I tried to, as much as I could in a book, talk about how those things operate together. One of my former teachers was a Teach for America alum in Dallas, and he's an administrator in Brooklyn, New York, and they literally promoted him approximately a month ago to an assistant principal, and he's probably one of the best young teachers I've ever worked with, a TFA guy. So I know of a lot of success stories, but I think about, there's the pedagogical, and then there is the political aspect of how those things work. And I think those are things that we can't ignore, because if you want to stay in a profession, and particularly here in DC, I can talk about the pressure to give, particularly when we were having Race to the Top funds in 2009 and 10 or 11, the pressure to give veteran teachers substandard reviews so that we could X them out. Like literally getting calls from DC public schools saying, this person is $85,000 against your budget, and we could move this teacher from this school over there and it'll be $72,000, and that extra $12,000 you can use. Those are some of the conversations that we end up having, and I'm literally looking at the phone saying, I can't believe I'm having this conversation, because we're talking about an effective teacher, but the perception is this person is like the bad teacher on television, has their feet up, is reading in a newspaper, and the kids are throwing spitballs across the classroom, or putting kick me signs on each other's backs and things like that. That's the perception of how veteran teachers live and operate and move in our schools, and it's unfair, but at the same time, I believe it's calculated. Okay. Anyway, I'm talking.
I think that's what happened.
Oh, go ahead.
I think that's what happens when you treat education, a public good, as a commodity. That's when you turn it into an industry. I just think that there's some places like education that don't belong in the free market, and this is why.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Okay, next question. Respond to this statement. It says, school choice is political doublespeak and designed to obscure that governments have not provided strong public schools. Should say for Black children, that's my typo. Have not provided strong public schools for Black children. What do we think about this notion of school choice? Or do we want to skip that and go to chapter 10? What are you doing?
Well, I would just say this, my experience in Europe, and any of you guys who have been in Europe teaching, when families move communities, they don't fret over which school district to move to because it has a better school system. Your local school in your village or your community, like in Germany and these other places, that's the best school. It's the best school because it's in your community, because they all are high achieving schools. You can't say that for the United States. Your zip code determines the quality of the school that you're going to get. So I do agree. I agree that we have not put enough effort in public education or money, like from a government, from a national perspective. But I also think that that's calculated. So I think school choice is I think it's a self-defeating philosophy.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mari. Do we want to take a 2-minute stretch break I'm going to pose a few questions that are related to chapter 10, but I think I'm going to end us relatively soon. Do we want to take a stretch break or do we want to keep going? Thumbs up to keep going. Okay, let's keep going. Okay. Moving on to chapter 10, the next step is firefighting in places where Blacks have no presence or less of a presence. Where will you firefight and what will it look like for you? When we talk about next steps and where do we go for here, where will you firefight and what will that look like for you? Anyone want to chime in there?
Well, can you guys hear me okay? And okay. I think I'm going to firefight exactly where I am, and I'm going to start. Actually, I've started and continue with the restorative piece, especially when it comes to discipline. I think sometimes there's the discipline in schools. It can be one-sided a lot of times. And one thing I started, and I've been, when there's a problem, especially where children of different ethnic groups are involved, I try to, as much as possible, get them all together and we have a conversation about what happened. And not blaming, not pointing fingers, but just kind of first stating the facts, finding out where everybody, how everyone is feeling about where they are. And then we'll get to how it all started. And one thing I'm learning is that when it comes down to kids, it's not an issue of the different ethnic groups, but it seems like with the adults, there's a particular ethnic group that always seems to be sent to the office first. And so for me, that's where I'm gonna start with that.
Mr. Williams, this quote was probably the one that was the most noteworthy to me out of your book. Can't tell I'm a white guy. I think this is the question I've been asking for quite some time. You know, what do I do? Like, I think we all know what needs to happen, but we keep talking about what needs to happen or what needs to change, and who else is going to do that? It has to be policy. It has to be somewhere else at the systemic level. And I think, at least where I'm at right now, the notion of it's up to me, the notion of where I am is where I've got to make my difference. You know, we've got to change norms is kind of how I view this, that until it's not taboo to talk about race in the agencies in which we work, and until it's not improper or looked down upon or however it is, like, you know, it's like we don't talk about that until we change that perception. You know, or we've got to change that perception for any action to take place. We've got to make, and I don't know if this is accurate to say, but it certainly feels like we've got to get folks comfortable in a place where they can not feel threatened or not feel attacked. And it shouldn't be about certain people's comfort, but you've got to get them to a place where norms are changed, I guess is what I'm getting to. And I think this particular quote was just profound to me. And as we aim to change some of the perceptions of white people, and again, you know, I think there's memes out there about, you know, I think that were very popular, that this other one struck me as true, that, you know, when racism and the attention on racism, you know, rises up to the surface, white people join book clubs and we try to absolve ourselves of the guilt we feel or something like that, rather than taking action. And so I think thinking about all that, being more purposeful and taking the responsibility and the courage even to speak to other people that look like me, who have the ability to make change, or even if it's just changing norms, and giving folks permission to have these conversations, and hopefully turn into meaningful action.
The sad part about even having conversations, though, the climate is not allowing people to even have conversations. People cannot be honest because then you're accused of being racist. So it's very difficult in the climate to even have basic general conversation, because we all come with our own package, our own culture, our own preconceived ideas. And if someone is saying something, instantly someone seems like they're attacking what you're saying, not really fully understanding what you are saying, because they don't know your background, your perception, and they twist. So if we come with a bias already, and then someone says something, we're looking for an attack, it seems like, so it's very difficult to have honest conversations, which I feel we've kind of gone backwards a bit. I think probably 10, 15 years ago, I think there was more freedom to have honest conversations than at this point right now. It seems for us and our system, I feel.
Tell me more about that, Kathy. When you say we, you mean society in general, America, or the work environment that you're in? Tell me, unpack that a little bit for me.
Probably all of the above. I think that in our organization several years ago, when I thought we were going to move forward and we would have classes and we would have conversations, yes, they were guarded, but not nearly as guarded as they are right now. And for instance, even to say our organization wouldn't even let us have a book talk after our duty time, or because it's divisive or whatever, that's a problem, because then people can't really be honest, and you can't move forward without honesty and transparency, because often as individuals, we are bringing our preconceived notions that somebody is against us. And when I say this, my daughter was engaged, and she's Black, and she was dating and engaged to someone who's Black, and he could not get over what he called her whiteness, that she wasn't really Black, that she's an Oreo, and that so the constant feeling that the white man is keeping him down was so prevalent in his thought process. So what I'm saying, even in that, if we can't be honest and you can't have true discussions, it's difficult to move past that burning building. We can be individual firefighters and we have to do that. But as our system, our school system as right now, and what I think is happening in the United States, we might think we've opened up more and people are aware and they're enraged, but if we can't have honesty and transparency, it's not going to change.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Can I guess, as you were speaking, Ms. Kathy, I was thinking about, those are experiences we run into, right? And I guess I wonder is what assumptions are we making? What assumptions are we making about the person that might be right in front of us at this moment? Are we assigning value or assigning the values of everyone else we've ever come into contact with? because we have a lifelong experience where we've been hurt by this person when we were 20, this other person when we were 27, this person said something to me when I was 33, and now as a 41-year-old, when I see an individual, I might apply all of those experiences to this one situation that's happening right now, and can we, you know, and even applying all the stuff we read on social media, that this is what this is. You know, I've figured it out. We boiled it down. This is the answer. This is exactly what it is. Instead of taking that moment at that time, I don't know if that makes sense. It makes sense in my head. I'm not sure if I'm articulating it right, but dealing with the individuals that we deal with at the time we deal with them, it's too overwhelming. I guess what I'm getting at is it's too overwhelming to think we have to solve everything, right? If we say, hey, there's this big issue we've got to deal with, we're never going to get started. And maybe this is back to my own personal take on this, that I'm going to choose to do it individually, one-on-one, with the people that are in front of me, with the people that are in my sphere, with the people I can influence. And I'm going to try to ignore the noise of the media, social media, and my perceptions of how overwhelming a task this can seem. I don't know if that helps. Again, this is my own personal take on this. I think it matters what we do wherever we are.
May I say something else? And Nathan, what you just said is so important. We have to start where we are, and that is why I choose to make sure that when students are sent to my office, especially African American boys are sent to my office, that I get the background of exactly what has happened, because they are sent to the office a whole lot more. And one thing we're starting to do is I'm starting to graph these office referrals and getting the demographics of who is coming and how often are they coming and what they're coming for. Did I go out?
No, I said who sent them.
Right, absolutely. And so that's going to help me, and hopefully as I share this information with my staff, we will find out, you know, what is going on. We can have these conversations. Our staff, before the school year started, some teachers came and they wanted to do a Crusaders for Social Justice initiative at our school. Well, with the executive order that came down, that was going to be a problem. So we wrote it up and I sent it forward to our Mr. Bagnus, and you guys know who he is. And he said everything that we were
who's
going
that?
to. Well, oh yes, you don't know. Mr. Bagnus is our CEO, and what is his title? Somebody help me out. He's the guy for all legal matters.
Diversity manager.
Yeah, so he's our diversity point of contact.
Okay.
Yes, so anything with diversity or whatever issues, we have to make sure that it's approved through his office. So we sent our plan up to him, and everything we cited was straight from DoDEA's READY initiative, the race, equity, diversity, inclusion, this new initiative that came out over this summer. And so we worded it, we pulled our standards, we pulled everything right from DoDEA. So it came back that it was approved. So we're gonna have our first meeting on this coming Tuesday, where our teachers on our seminar time, where they're going to be educating our students on some social justice initiatives. So I think we all can start with a small piece wherever we are to try to, you know, move things forward. Find that piece where that's your passion. That you, for me right now, is make sure that there's equity in the way especially our African American boys are viewed as being the troublemakers or being the ones who getting in trouble. That for me, it has to be equity there. So that's my push. And for our teachers, it's about educating our students about social justice. And how I can support them. That's what I focus on.
Awesome. Awesome. Let me know how I can help you all in that sense, Veronica. Okay. Someone else? I forgot the question. The next step in firefighting. Go ahead.
Can I ask Mary to, or I don't know if it's Mary or Marie, but please, she posted something really long in the chat box. If you can just verbalize it.
Yeah, so it's Mary. So I was just kind of picking up a little bit on what Kathy was saying, and because I see this all the time, which is speaking as a white person, we need to be willing to break with white solidarity, and in those moments when we know full well what is going on, whether it's language, innuendo, insinuation, etc. We need to be willing to break with white solidarity and get out of our feelings. I'm sorry, I don't have much sympathy for myself or others who find that difficult. That's how we move the conversation. That's how we firefight wherever we are. For instance, and I've seen this happen multiple times, just using the example that Kathy gave us, if a Black man dares to be brave enough to express frustration, or dare I say anger, right? Dare I say anger over the oppression and the systemic racism in America, I can go one of two ways with that. I can get all upset and hurt feelings and contaminate the conversation with my negative feelings of guilt, or maybe even possibly resentment or something like that, because is he talking about me? Is he blaming me for holding him down? What have I ever done to this man? But that's the wrong, in my opinion, that's the wrong way to go. That you're completely contaminating the conversation when all you really need to do is listen to that man express, talk about his experiences, and engage in that dialogue, and then maybe do a little self-reflection. How have I contributed, whatever your race is, how have I contributed to the system? Because we're all part of the system. And so the minute we start getting into our feelings and feeling like we're being targeted or blamed is when the conversation stops. That's just my perception, my experiences.
Okay.
I think I'll add, though, to maybe counter that not all of us are in the same place. Not all of us are comfortable. Not all of us have experienced that. If that's your first time experiencing it and you feel blamed, you feel attacked, you might not have the skills or the coping to be able to parse that out, to separate, hey, it's not a personal attack. And those kinds of experiences can turn folks off. So I think grace is the word I keep, coming up with. Not making excuses and not holding people accountable, but doing it with compassion, meaning helping folks work through those kinds of experiences with compassion, and because the ultimate goal is, converting people to I don't want to say believe in this initiative, but we're equity. Equity is the ultimate goal. And whatever we need to do to get folks on that train or get on board with that, as repellent as they might be, or as toxic as they might be, that's our ultimate goal. That's what, and there may be some folks we can't ever win over, but
well, yeah, I think you're right, Nathan. I mean, because our truth is based on, our reality is all based on our truth, which is, to your point, all of our experiences. And so sometimes when someone comes at us with facts, which is the actuality, it can be very uncomfortable, right? If it doesn't meet our reality, that can be a very uncomfortable experience. And so there's a training, a development, right? There's a stamina that has to be, or a tolerance, right? That you're right, everybody has different places and where they're going, but I guess the point is we got to get started at some point, right?
Well, yeah, and I think the only other thing is if you're a person who who feels attacked or whatever, like be okay with that. I don't like I don't want to. I guess I don't want the message to be like, oh, you failed, you're not an ally, you know, you can't cut it. We got to stop, you know, not polarizing. What's the word? Picking sides or making value judgments based on a moment. You know, it's a process. This is a process. I think that's probably more accurate.
And it's not a, you're saying it's not a partisan process. We have to do it. So if I could jump in for a quick second, this is a difficult space because we're in different, not all of us are in the same school, and we didn't take a week to have this training, right? So think of this as your classroom, right? You have you got 4 hours to make sure all of these fourth graders can do long division within that 4 hours. And some of your kids may not be able to multiply. You're gonna have a few kids who, I mean, they're doing algebra, so long division is mental math to them. Then you have some kids who are in the middle. You have some children who, right? And that's how we approach these conversations. So Nathaniel mentioned this notion of grace, and Mary, and I'm sorry, Mary, because I called you Mari like 11 times.
That's okay, because it's spelled Mari, and I'm in Japan, so everybody calls me Mari. Totally okay.
Well, you're married now. I got it. Your mama named you Mary. I'm gonna call you Mary. So my apologies for that. We talk about you know, sometimes conversations turn into, you know, as you get to a level of comfort where you can have this conversation, people of color are suffering, right? But I think to Nathaniel's point, and this is what I say, you have to start the firefighting exactly where you are. You don't have to be Martin Luther King, right? There's a certain amount of courage and zeal and intellect and fortitude. You don't have to do that. You just have to look at clearing the smoke in the room that you're in. And if you're able to clear that smoke, you can go into the hallway, and you might be a principal and you might be able to clear the smoke all in your room. But one of the things that David Bell said, and I don't know if you all are familiar with Faces at the Bottom of the Well, but he is considered, along with Alan Freeman, to be one of the fathers of critical race theory. And he says, you're not going to get rid of racism. And that's liberating. These are his words. That should be liberating, because you know you consistently have your oxygen mask, your tank, your fire extinguisher, or your truck right there, because it's not going to go away. But I think for this group, it's important to acknowledge that we can be in different places, we can be in different spaces, but that we are the system. As a consultant, I've never, ever been in a training where the people in the training thought I had the right people in the room. It's always, you got to get the people in sales. Mr. Williams, you preach it to the choir. You need to have the people downtown. And if I'm working with a district and I have the people downtown, is Desmond, you got to get to those teachers, or it's the parents. And if I'm with the parents, they're like, listen, Mr. Williams, we got you. We understand. You got to get the teachers. So my message to you is, it starts with you, and you start where you are. And one of the things that I'm working on, so sidebar, I have an announcement. All of you are going to get the Firefighters Companion Guide for free. It's done. I finished it approximately 3 weeks ago. The goal is to release it on February 28th, which is going to be the anniversary of the day I released The Burning House. So if I have your address, you're great. You're going to get it. But if you are a person who purchased a book from Amazon, you need to email me and make sure I have your mailing address. But that guide is designed to give you the opportunity to journal. There's some step-by-step guidance, and I provide essentially standards for firefighting that help us get to where we need to go. Because as we're acknowledging, people are in different places, right? And it's as I said in our first conversation, I grew up in a housing project in Detroit, and I didn't know I was poor until I got to Howard University. So everyone has to have their own awakening. But if you don't acknowledge that you are part of the system, then the system will perpetuate itself through you and your actions or your lack thereof. Okay. So I just want to make that clear. My mentor talks about this idea of the system, and he says he uses this analogy of the spider web and the spider. And when you talk about the system, you're essentially saying it's the spider web, it's the spider web, it's the spider web, and yet the spider is walking right past you, weaving more spider web, right? So we got to deal with the person who has that power, regardless of how small or large that power structure or that influence and power might be. Okay, I'm gonna move us along.
One second, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You brought up Matthew K's book.
Mm-hmm.
You said somebody needs to read Matthew K's book. What book? Which book?
Yeah, so that
and then,
so that was for Veronica. I think it's called Light Not Fire, and it is a book of how to talk to children about racism. But if you Amazon him, his name is Matthew K, and the premise of the book, lady, and I'm glad you mentioned it, Tina, because I forgot I put it in there just that quick. And it's not in the resource guide at the end of my book. But Mr. K's premise is that because of the 24-hour news cycle and Fox News and CSNBC and particularly ESPN, our children don't know how to have a conversation. They go right into rapid fire debate mode. So he says you have to create an environment where everyone feels safe, and you might be in this position or this level of comfort in the conversation, and this person might be here, but we create an environment where we make allowances for everyone to have these very sensitive conversations that leads to anti-racist work with essentially our 6th through 12th graders. I think it's called Light Not Fire, but his name is Matthew K. Super good guy out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Yeah, and it can really serve as a template to help teachers manage those conversations around race, around social justice issues, and really how you build decorum in your room to manage disagreement, conflict, varying opinions, and things like that. Thank you. Okay, how we doing? Okay, our last question, next question is very similar to the last. It says, would you like to share 1 or 2 takeaways from the text? 1 or 2 takeaways from the text. Everybody looking at a book. Don't look at a book. You're making me feel like a teacher here. Don't look at a book. Why are y'all looking at a book?
Can I go ahead?
Yes, ma'am.
I loved chapter 3. I loved the report card that was given. I thought it was very clever, well written out. I think all the kids can benefit from that, not just Black boys. I am reading this book around my own children. and talking about how for Black boys it's different, and I want them to be aware of that. And I talked about the report card with them, and I explained, this is good for you too, and tell other people and make sure they know too. I love the part about making the relationships with the teachers and the administrators, because it's true, because as a teacher, when I know a kid and something's going on, I'm like, are you okay? You know there's something more to it. So if kids know that, that really makes a difference. It's really helpful for them. That was my favorite chapter.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Someone else? Takeaways from the text?
Desmond, I call your book my new favorite book, but I'm going to tell you, I have to go back and look to see what chapter it's in. And I know you don't want me to look, so what I will say is...
It's an open book question. How about that?
Thank you, thank you.
It's very low stakes,
So,
very low stakes.
All right. What I will say is that you read many books and it tells you everything you're doing wrong, things that you already know that are wrong with the system. And what I believe is that you gave us tools as firefighters on how to move forward beyond what the theory is. I especially liked the outline for pre-K, not pre-K, but kindergarten through 12th grade, on what studies and what focus the curriculum should or could be for Black children. That was my absolute most favorite part.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
I like the real world examples that you shared throughout the entire book, particularly, of course, chapter 8 for me, the restorative justice piece. I think it's just so important. And it actually reaffirmed, because I was reading another book, and it's like, I can't remember the exact title, but like last year about restorative justice, hacking the system, something. But anyway, and as I was reading that, and based on my own research, and a lot of what you said just affirmed that I was on the right track. So I appreciate that, making sure that our students
Okay,
really
awesome.
treated.
You say you felt you were on the wrong track. I didn't hear the last part.
Oh, I said, made me feel that I was on the right track.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, with what I was doing. So, yeah, it affirmed. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Awesome.
Good morning. I thought the whole book was phenomenal. And as I was reading through my book, I was thinking that this would be a great opportunity to have dialogue with our young Black boys that could be like in a Boys to Man program that would kind of highlight them and also to empower them to be better people as a whole. And that's all I can say right now.
Okay. Thank you, Valerie. Thank you. Thank you.
I would just second what Sherry had to say about the K through 12. It felt actionable, I guess, and actionable is good.
Thank you, Mary. Anyone else?
I think for me, not only your text was helpful, going back also what Sherry said about the K through 12 or K through 6 curriculum, but also these discussions have been helpful for me. I think some of the suggestions and tips that have been given by everybody or what they're trying to do within their own community. Being in the classrooms as a specialist, I've observed teachers trying to make a difference. One of our 5th grade teams just did a PBL on civil rights advocates and people that are African Americans that the children have never heard about before. And that to me was a huge impact because I see that people are trying to make a difference. And so that's encouraging and kind of gives me hope. So.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, if I can tell a quick story, the gentleman who I was just referring to, who's in Brooklyn, when he started working for me at the Bishop Walker School, I gave him just some units of study. And I said, you have to bring this to life. And he was teaching ELA and social studies, and the fourth graders had to do a unit on Black inventors, and the third graders were doing a unit on the Olmecs. And he was like, what the hell is an Olmec? And I said, you gotta look it up. And he was like, well, where are the books? And I said, our history is not in the books. You have to create it. And he said, how the hell am I gonna do that? You need to give me a book or something. And I said, welcome to the world of teaching history through a lens in which these children will never get it once they leave here in fifth grade. And he struggled. Like that first unit on the Olmecs was, he struggled. He taught the Black inventors unit to the fourth graders, literally directly out of the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar book. The name of it escapes me now. I think it's called What Color Is Your World? But Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has a book on Black inventors. And they took that thing and ran with it, and kids were bringing potato chips to school when they found out that an African-American invented potato chips and ice cream and all of these other things. But fast forward a year later, when it was time for Mr. Minor to teach that unit on the Olmecs again, it was a completely different ball game. So I just, I'm glad some people got something out of it, because as a person who grew up in the inner city and grew up in Black bookstores and went to a historically Black college, some of that knowledge and information I took for granted. And it's amazing when you present multicultural information and curriculum to students, how it builds appreciation. And for Black children, it's esteem building, because everyone wants to walk into a house and see pictures of themselves, because if you don't, it just feels weird. Like, dude, you don't got no pictures of your family up? Like, what the heck is happening here, right? And that's education for Black children in a lot of ways. Even with Black teachers, it's like, really? You're not gonna learn about, right, Henry in the Box and the Olmecs, and there's so much more I could go on. But anyone else want to share? I'm talking too much. Did I miss anyone who wanted to share?
I really appreciate the concept of relations, and that regardless of age, veteran teachers have something to offer. What we didn't have time to talk about the restorative justice chapter very much, and I really appreciated that, because that made me think, often when you hear that on the news or something, you're often thinking it's always driven by finances, that someone wants to be financially restored. But I love the concept of the restorative justice in school, because if we don't, it's not about that. I don't think that every Black person is asking to be, give me money and then you have solved a problem of injustice. But in the school setting, chapter of 8, I loved the ideas that we really have to have students have ownership, and then that's going to carry over through their lifetimes as well, to give them the tools they need. And so that, anytime circles and peer mediation and so forth, I thought those were very productive things for students to be able to have. If we don't really deal with the issues, we can't really educate children in other areas, because if you're constantly thinking and not dealing with maybe some of the behavior issues that people say they're being sent to the principal and so forth, that would help in that area.
Mm-hmm.
People would have some engagement with those skills and strategies that you've mentioned.
One of my heroes who I don't really quote extensively, because he's pretty he's just out there. But he talks about replacing racism with a system of justice. And he says that when you replace racism with justice, you're essentially creating a world of balance and harmony. So when we talk about restoration, one of the things I'm working with the school now on is this concept of what are we restoring back to, right? Like you have to have something to restore to. But yeah, it's not about money. It's literally about when children make mistakes, they're part of the process of fixing the mistake so that they take ownership of what they did. They're publicly acknowledging what they did. And then there's comment from the public about what their feelings are so that we can move on without the punitive discipline. And I'll tell you guys, I absolutely believe in suspension. Like I was on a podcast and this guy was going to kick me off his podcast. I said, I absolutely believe in suspension. And I swear to God, he was going to kick me off. And if I could go into the story a little bit deeper, I first became a principal in 2008. It was in April. And my first full school year was that fall. And Barack Obama had been elected. And I was listening to George Bush give an interview, and they asked him if he had any advice for President Obama. And he said, I don't really have any advice for him. He's a really smart guy. But since you asked me, he said, the one thing I will say is it's a very lonely walk. And that was the first time in my life that Bush 43 actually made sense to me. He said, it's a very lonely walk and you have to be very comfortable with the decisions that you make because you can't please everyone. And he said, you're going to have he's going to have tons of smart people around him. He's going to have advisors who know way more about a particular subject than he does. And he said, I found that to be intimidating. But he says, it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, the decision is yours. And I think one of the hardest things in the school is as a principal and as a school leader is thinking about how are you creating consequences that are meaningful for the entire student body. And I just think that restorative piece is the best way to go. However, suspension can be part of restoration. And, like we're talking about in the last 2 years I was principal, we used 7 days of suspension over a 2-year process. And one parent said, I thought you didn't suspend kids. And I was like, man, I thought I didn't either, but this kid, he's gotta go. But the point is, what options do we have available and how is that bringing restoration to the entire group? So again, I wish we could, man, I would love to double back and talk more about restorative justice because I think it's a touchy subject, particularly when some environments just have all kinds of behavioral issues and things like that. But again, how do we create consequences that are meaningful and that the children are taking ownership to the degree that the adults are being taken out of the equation and putting students front and center and fixing what needs to be fixed. So sorry for that. That was literally the last question. If there are no more questions for me, I'm gonna turn it back over to Miss Sherry Hayes.
Thank you so much, Desmond. I do not have anything that's going to be mind-blowing or prolific to close, except, a sincere thanks for everyone who put time into reading this book and taking time out of their Thursdays and Saturdays to really have a great discussion, some great discourse on how we move forward, on how we start supporting or continuing to support our Black boys or children in marginalized groups. And Desmond, for you taking time out to really bringing this book to life for us and sharing. It's not very often that we get to actually speak to the author and hear what their thought process was or what their opinion was, and how they really came about all of this. So we really appreciate you taking time out to share, and also respecting the fact that we all have different opinions and we're all coming from different places. And, I shared with Nathan maybe about 2 weeks ago, as he shared today, we're all on a different path. And as long as we can respect the path that everybody is on, although we're all traveling that same road to get to that one destination, it's not going to be the same. Some of us are still on that farm dirt road. Some of us are taking local roads, the expressway, highways, byways, shortcuts. But with all of us having that same vision of where we want to go and supporting one another in the travel, I think that we're at a good place and it's a great start. And I would like to see our, PAC South as well as PAC East District. We had some PAC West folks on here, continue on that road, because we do have leadership that supports us. And hopefully in January, things will change and executive orders will be reversed, and we'll be able to do this on a larger scale, and really hear the voices too of the other firefighters who are scared. They are scared to be seen and heard with us. So thank you everyone for what you're doing, what you're attempting to do, and hopefully we'll do this again soon. And Desmond has dropped his email address in there. I know, I'm telling you right now, Laura Fisk is going to email you, because her professional growth plan this year aligns directly with what we're doing. So I know for a fact that she's going to contact you.
Awesome.
So thank you, everyone. And I don't know if anyone has any closing words or anything to share. Please feel free to unmute.
Well, thank you, Dr. Hayes, for putting us all together. Thank you for that spark that started way back in me. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. And thank you, Mr. Williams. This has been great. I actually got your autograph copy, and I bought one from Amazon, just in case. So I have 2 copies. Now I have a copy to share with someone. So,
yeah, and if I can say this, you guys, I'm super accessible. If you need to reach out to me via email, but this is not easy work, right? And the PowerPoint I gave you all a few weeks ago, I said that beyond any existential threat, I think racism is the biggest problem on the planet, and it permeates all areas of human activity. And I just want to reiterate that it starts with you, but the only thing you have to do is be yourself. And if you are growing, and if you are learning, and if you are giving actionable steps, as Mary said, we can work in unison, and we can work in individual pockets to replace racism with a system of justice. And that's the world I want for my 2 daughters. That's the world I want for your children, where we can literally say, you know what, we didn't start off in the best place, but the planet is a much better place than it was in 2020, because I think we would all agree in 2020, the planet is a much better place for people of color than it was 40 or 50 years ago. So it probably looked daunting in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, but we have come a long way. I think that historical context is important. and the work that you all are doing. It may seem difficult, and it may seem, you know what, this little lesson that I'm doing today is not going to make a big difference. I'm just going to watch the game. But it does make a difference, right? It's literally like the person who at 5 a.m. they get up and they go run 2 miles. It's going to pay off in your 70s and 80s. So keep up the hard work, keep reading, keep studying, keep dialoguing, but take actionable steps, right? Just keep taking the actionable steps. If you need to reach out to me, I'm super accessible. If you leave me an email, I will get back to you eventually. And like I said, hopefully in mid-Marchish, I'll be mailing you all copies of a free book. So who doesn't like free? So awesome. Thank you all, and have a happy, safe, blessed holiday. And if you all need me, just reach out to me. And Sherry, we need to have a follow-up conversation soon. So let's email and figure that out. All righty, everyone.
Sounds good.
Take care. Be blessed.